All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here. We've had a great conference so far, lots of great sessions. If you're interested in those sessions, if you happen to miss one of them, we're going to be having those probably on our Twitch channel and also some of our other platforms as offline content that you'll be able to grab at some point in time and share with your students or with your coaches or advisors, etc. But the next session we have coming up is Cora Kennedy, who I'm going to allow to give the entire bio herself because she has a ton of different positions and wears all sorts of different hats. But the reason we asked her here specifically was as the director of diversity and equity inclusion for the NECC, which is the National Esports Collegiate Conference. It's one of the larger conferences, and she works really a lot in that realm and has a lot of data and information on that. And we are happy to get that today. Again, if you are needing information about the conference or the future sessions, or to get recordings of the past sessions, go to levelmeupnow.com. But other than that, without further ado, Cora, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. But yeah, hi, I'm Cora. I am a lot of things. I'll get that in a second, but I'm talking about kind of DEI in collegiate esports, what it looks like, and how you can understand the cultural program through its diversity and equity practices, where your inclusion may fit in, and some warning signs you can also see of what programs may or may not be a fit for you. So, some background. Also, first of all the pictures are mostly my students. Anyone in green is my student. And we have one of the most diverse programs in the nation here at Wesleyan. And I've made that by just really purposeful inclusion efforts that have gone a long way for my students. But some background, I'm a lot of things. So first, I am the director of esports at Illinois Wesleyan University. I have been here since July of 2021. I'm also the director of a group that I started in October called Aurora Series. It creates this opportunity for marginalized gender competition in collegiate Valorant, and we're expanding to Overwatch and other games next semester. I do a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion writing for myself. I'm making a textbook. I also work with the Esports Advocate, VEF, and a couple others. I'm a photographer. I'm also the DEI director for the NECC on the committee for Voice. And my background is I'm formerly a teacher. I taught high school esports, or I taught high school math, and then also did esports and was one of the founders of Glenwood High School Esports, as well as a founder for the Illinois High School Esports Association. So I'm an educator by trade who's moved into collegiate esports, and I love seeing students happy. Why I do my job is to see my students happy, and I love doing that. And so the way I build my programs is to be student-centered, student-focused, and ensure that students have an opportunity to find their home. Because on the broadly speaking, collegiate esports is a way for schools to recruit and retain players, and it's a way for us to help students find their home on campus to find more motivation to push through the hard times, push through difficult classes, and things like that. So just for me, I build all my programs, do everything I do off of the three C's. I got these from Mark Garvey Candela, who has been preaching these for ages. He's the former director of Twitch Student and really close friend of mine and a philanthropist. He talks about the three C's of collegiate esports: competition, community, and career. So competition wise, it's looking at how you're competing as a representative for your school, both in person and online. We do a lot of travel for our program. I travel for roughly 15, 20 lands a school year. And then we also play online. We play roughly 200 matches a semester. So a lot of competitions available there. But I'd be remiss and I would be doing my students a disservice if I didn't do the other two components as well. So we also have the community oriented stuff where we do like, we're doing a pizza and Mario Kart thing for finals week next week. Or just some fun things like, hey guys, we can watch party for this event. Hey, he wants to go grab dinner now? We're going rock climbing, etc., etc. Finding a spot for students just want to do stuff. And so community for me is the culture and environment of the program, and it's non-competitive events. Because how we treat non-competitive things means the same as how we treat competitive. And making sure students find that balance and that friendliness to it. And then career. Um, there's a lot of things in esports that go beyond just competing. There's a lot of career skills. Casters, producers. I have my whole setup here because I did broadcasting from here usually. Media, photography, management, budgeting, financials, law, player associations, etc. There's so much career focus. And so I put a lot of emphasis on making sure my students have as much exposure to career focused things as possible to understand where they get the opportunity to step in. And I think a program is not complete. An esports program in collegiate is not complete unless it does all three of these things in some meaningful capacity. Offering student work but not doing any training or work around that is not the same. Offering a community event but not doing anything with it is not the same. It's doing a student a disservice if they're not seeing all three of these and having an opportunity to engage in all three. So for me, I talk about DEI a lot because I want to talk about supporting things. I'm pretty unabashedly me. Something we do for Wesleyan is we've done special social cultural things. We have pride jerseys that are used as fundraisers. We did breast cancer pink jerseys for a fundraiser for breast cancer awareness. I have stickers for every pride flag underneath the sun for Wesleyan. And we make our program about the students. DEI matters because it's helping students see themselves in these things. So, some broadly speaking, some truths about DEI and why it matters, matters, and why you should be thinking about it is broadly speaking, diverse environments are less toxic. People in a space that is built to be inclusive are less likely to be toxic. The number of reminders I have to give about language and conduct in this program, now that I'm in my third year here, is almost none. Students get it. It's a culture thing. From day one, they see the culture of the program and they see why this matters and why we do this. More inclusion also means more opportunities for success. I have A, B, C, and even D teams for certain games that just operate. And maybe the D teams aren't the most heavily coached games or titles or teams, but I'm giving them a space to have an opportunity to compete, to find success, to do what they want to do. Giving students more inclusion and more opportunities always sets them up to have just a chance to make an impact. And DEI helps students find their home on campus. Every student in high school and college really wants that social group on campus. And you find your people, because what on campus and college, you may be thousands of miles away from home. For example, my program, I have players from my Overwatch team alone, two from California, two from Illinois, one from Alaska. So they're all over and they're all friends now because they find this as their home and they found their people on campus. So creating this inclusive environment that brings equity to all of them helps students find their home. Generally, as well, a homogenous environment made of solely the same people, same ideas, same thoughts, everything, has less meaningful opportunities for growth and development because everyone's thinking the same way. Nobody's pushing you, nobody's challenging you, nobody's helping you see what could be different. And so there's a lot of ways in which meaningful growth comes from being challenged, being pushed, but not just accepting that things are the way they are. And lastly, that a purposeful lack of inclusion where programs that are very non-diverse on purpose is to me a warning sign of a program that may not be the best fit for everyone. And you have to really understand, is this a good place for me? Is this the right fit for me? So DEI matters and it's helping us understand where a student fits in a program and how they can find their fit. So something I reference a lot is what's called the Trends in Collegiate Esports report. I was the co-author last year for it, and the upcoming one, which I'm using data that's not released yet, is I'm an editor for this year's version, and they do a diversity breakdown of all the data we gather. So the trends report surveys roughly, we take in about 200-ish survey results from programs across the nation, both club and varsity. And then we cut down to the data set that actually works well, because some things are some answers are clear, some answers are not exact. We cut it down to 120-ish. So of 120-ish schools, here's the breakdown among schools right now. And I want to point out some things. So what percentage of students and staff fall in these categories? And you see a bell curve only on the students that are non-white category. And it's still a skewed bell curve too, where maybe the most common thing is that we see programs that have roughly 10 to 40% of students are non-white. But that's very broad category. So breaking it down, AAPI is Asian American Pacific Islander, and that's broadly speaking less than 10% of most programs. African American, less than 10% of most programs. Latinx, less than 10%. The only place where it's not that on a sociocultural level is female. And female looks at 10 to 20, but that's even a percentage based and it's not necessarily accurate to the numbers. So we look at how these numbers work as well, or like the number of students who are queer or first generation or international students or students with disabilities. These numbers are all higher than previous years. I have the data of the previous years. I know they're higher. And they're getting better and better and better. There's still a long way to go, and many programs do find themselves being single faceted. For example, I can tell you where Wesleyan falls in these. We are in the 40 to 60% category for non-white. We are around 10 to 20 for AAPI, about 10 to 20 African American, about 10 to 20 Latinx. Actually, no, 10%, less than 10% Latinx, which is also a campus population thing. Female, we're actually at 40 to 60. That one blip there is us. Um, Non-binary and LGBTQ, we are the highest end at 40%. First gen, we are also at 40%. International, we're around 10%. And students with disabilities, we're at 40%. So Wesleyan Esports and my program is, broadly speaking, one of the most diverse in the nation because of a lot of purposeful recognition and understanding of how these things work. But beyond categories, how many people actually fit these categories? Whenever students do campus tours of our program, and what I like to see is I want to show them who the students are. I want them coming in during competitive hours, during practice hours, to see the student population and see if they can see themselves in the program. So this is more breakdowns of the actual numbers. So what number of staff and students in the program are minorities? And we see, broadly speaking, the average is 17, median 5, median 10, mode 5, and then the max is 100. But like broadly speaking, this is the numbers are. And understanding what the number of a program is and what the data of that is, and then looking at where you would fit in that is really important to understand how a university environment would be best fit for you. Similar example is women. Women in esports. So statistically right now, there are roughly 49% of all gamers, according to Statista, are women. But the number of women in esports and gaming in an organized manner is significantly lower because of cultural barriers and folks who purposefully exclude them. So looking at women in the program versus women on rosters, it's a pretty stark difference. Almost every stat points to women in the program being less than 50, and those are even outliers. Most of these are gathered down here. And then only one program has more than 20 women on a competitive rosters, and that's just how it is. And so finding your fit, finding your people, finding this understanding that not every program is built the same, not every space has the same number of students in these things is really important to know how things look and how they are perceived and where you would fit in this and how comfortable you'd feel. I know some programs have a really low number of women, but those women are hugely impactful. Where some programs have a very high number of women, but the women are very much sidelined. So it is different, and pure data, while it can give us a lot, it cannot give us everything. But things are getting better. Um, so this is a survey question we ask every year of, do you believe your program has improved diversity last year? And it's simple, no change, less or more diverse. And we're seeing that, yes, there's a slight dip in being more diverse, but broadly speaking, it's still getting better. Every year we're improving and growing and getting better every year. So DEI metrics are looking better. And there's strong signs year over year that's improving. It's not perfect. Understanding where a program is now and where they're going to in the future is really important to understand where you would find your home. Something I will also note is there are some programs like mine, for example, of I stayed basically the same year over year, but it's still a very high number. It's just not growing because I already have such a diverse population. And then it's understanding how you compare to your institution. So, for example, looking at data, Illinois Wesleyan is considered a PWI, a primarily white institution. And so esports is, broadly speaking, almost entirely more diverse than campus because we are a collection of a lot of the outliers on campus. And so it's looking at, is a program more or less diverse than campus? Because sometimes caps a very specific subset, sometimes it doesn't, and it's understanding what that looks like. I would say a lot of programs do fall in this 4 to 5 category, but some do still lack the diversity as well. So there's still a way to go, but things are positive. Programs are statistically becoming increasingly more diverse. There has never been a better time to enter esports, and it is getting increasing diversity metrics across the board in almost every program. So it's getting there. It's not perfect, but it's getting there. Competitive and casual groups are narrowing the gap, but there's still a lag behind in competitive groups of including a diverse audience and diverse set of students. Whereas a lot of, like I was referencing in this slide, a lot of players on a casual side may be diverse, but on a competitive side may not be. So looking at what the competitive program actually looks like. It's important to look at how the diversity of a program compares the institution and whether you are an outlier or part of the group or so on. So it's understanding where that fits. And then, despite the pressures of the world around us and culture and government and all that stuff, things are getting better. And collegiate will always be insulated from the woes of professional, and especially on diversity, that is bigger than I can ever explain. But I think the biggest thing I always stop students before they go into collegiate esports is you need to know why you. And this is the first thing I ask students when they come to Wesleyan or reach out about applying and that kind of thing is why? Why don't I be here? Because every program's culture is different. Winning is important to me, but it's not the only thing. And in my program, I focus a lot on culture building and making sure students find their people. Whereas some programs are winning at all cost programs, some programs are very community focused, some programs are for student work. Every program has their own culture. So take a moment when you're talking to directors, staff, coaches, students, etc., to talk about what does the culture of that program look like. So some programs are focused on winning. It's about trophies, competitive achievements, getting your mark on the landscape of the industry. Those are your Maryvilles, your SLUs, your um, St. Thomas, all these schools that have massive competitive achievements. Some is for fun. We do that center picture is an ad from an event we did last year where we just decided to make a fun little goofy graphic the day of the event, and it was just funny. And it's just having fun, making memories, and enjoying your time in college. And for some, it's community. It's finding your people and developing friendships for your community. Once again, I can't make everyone friends. I close, but if they are, it's a lot more fun that way. And so it's knowing your why. Take a moment when you start looking at collegiate sports to know why you want to be here and what your why looks like. And then evaluating culture. Before you do anything else with a program, look at the culture. Stop and just look at it. Ask questions, observe, sit in a scrim, see what's up. How do they act in game? How do they act in practice? How do they act in matches compared to practice? How diverse the student population? What sort of rules are in place for conduct? Like I have a handbook for my program, but my handbook is for my program, and not everyone has that. Am I the only one of my major? I know it may sound weird, but sometimes you feel really isolated in an esports program when you're the only one of your majors. No one else you can gripe with, share your frustrations, share your complaints, and these kind of things. What's the average workload? A lot of programs keep it below 15 hours a week. Some don't. What's the workload on the major, on the program, and the esports? How does the university view the program? Some universities, it's very esports is supported top down the whole institution. Some universities, esports is a thorn in their side. Talk with them about what does the university see out of it. Because if the university sees esports as a nuisance, they're more likely to treat it like a nuisance as well and say that it's this sort of side thing that tends to be pushed aside and just purposefully put down. And in general, just how many people like me are here? Do I see others like me? And sometimes someone has to be the first person, but once they're the first person, others will come find them. I had a woman join my program, Yuri, about 3 years ago, and she's brought so many women to our program since then because they just see her and see her loud and proud doing her thing. And it takes some bravery to do that. But once you see others like you, it just gets that community going. How approachable are staff? I have an open door policy. My students know they can talk to me at any time. They can DM me. I get funny jokes in my DMs all the time. It just happens like that. And it's how approachable our staff, how safe do current students feel in the program, how safe they feel in their major, how safe they feel in school. And it comes down to it. Does the space being the community, the in-person space, whatever they have, does it feel comfortable and welcoming to you? Does it feel like a space that you don't feel like going to be cold and be an outsider? Understand the program, understand what you want it to be and what you want out of it, and understand where you'd fit in that. And in general, representation matters. A concept called tokenization, where someone is singular out of the group. Like you're the only person of your sociocultural background, you're the only person of your racial background, identity, so and so. But if someone is tokenized and purposely put in a pedestal for their identity, that is tokenizing them and treating them as this other thing to be treated differently. That's not inclusive. That's actually exclusive. It's keeping someone out of the loop. I make a lot of strides to not put my students in a spot where they feel like they're being tokenized and isolated and not included. It's really important for them to understand how that works and how they see this as home. Also, in most programs, being the only person with your identity, whatever that may be, is not that uncommon. Unless you're the identity most common at school, not uncommon. But understand that even if you're the only one, more will gather if they see others. Show face on campus. Make sure folks know who you are. I tell students what jerseys are on campus and make sure students can see them and find them and ask questions about esports. I make myself accessible. I make my program accessible and make sure folks can see me and talk to me. And then lastly, organization staff and leaders very commonly don't represent all facets of identities. That's just how life works. But if a leader doesn't represent you, they should at least support you. If you come to them with struggles and, hey, this is happening due to this identity or this issue, they should go bad for you. In the end, I am the closest thing to a parent for many of my students on campus who are from thousands of miles away. I take it seriously. I treat them like I would my own children and make them understand that I'm here to create a space for them. And if there's issues, they should tell me. If a leader doesn't support a student from a diverse background, that leader is not serving the student population. And what it comes down to is authenticity. Being authentic. Leadership and culture program comes from the top. And from the top down, students need to understand that if a leader is hiding behind executive speak, they're hiding behind really obtuse language and stuff that sounds really fancy and academic, but not coming down to earth, it's a warning sign because they're hiding behind the sort of language to get around saying the hard thing or saying the weird thing. People need to understand that authenticity comes from being real. Yes, there's a time and place for being really professional and flowery with your language, but also it shouldn't be the only thing. And there should be a space for people to be real and be authentic. Pay attention to how staff talk about students when students aren't there. I speak the world of my students because they're my kids after all. But if folks are talking about students like they're a nuisance, like they're this bothersome thing, that's really concerning. And it should be a warning sign that they cannot do this and that's inauthentic to how they run the program. Like I said, culture comes to the top. And if the program feels at odds with the institution, likely the program will feel hostile as well. Lastly, just look at how diverse the program is. Percentage wise, it's like, hey, I may be one of the schools that has so and so students in the program, but how many is that? If they say, oh, we have women in our program, if it's one, it's not really a lot. So understand how many students total those metrics are and look at it authentically. If you ask the hard questions and they stutter and stammer and don't answer it correctly or answer it with enthusiasm, there is a lot of concerns about whether they are authentic or not. So look for authenticity, look for metrics, look for DEI, look for ways that programs talk about their students in a positive light, and understand that not every category can be hit. Not every program can be all these categories at 100% because it's not how a population metric works. But if they are specifically one category and you are not that one category, you will feel left out. So look at what you actually want to get out of it, who's there, and how you'd fit in it. Because understanding the diversity breakdown of a program and then where you fit in that is the most important. Find your fit, find your home. Do not go to a school for the sake of just esports. That is wasting your time. Go to a school for the sake of esports, academics, career focus, community, everything else. Look at the program as a whole and not just competitive achievements, and you'll find a place you're far happier. And that's kind of a broad summary of DEI and collegiate esports and things that happen like this. I know I went through pretty fast, so I would appreciate if there are any questions, comments, concerns, things to talk about. I'm happy to answer. There's a very broad spectrum of things we can ask about DEI and collegiate esports, but it comes down to just knowing who's there and what you want to get.
So I'll keep an eye on our different platforms to see if there's any questions that come in. But until then, a few things, I guess. What do you see, Cora, as the as the barriers that we still have to overcome as far as getting to where the goals. Like you said, we're making progress, but we have a certain goal in mind. I don't know what that goal is. Is 100%.
Yeah.
But what are the barriers that are in place right now to getting there that you see?
So the main barrier right now is just staff understanding that the problem exists and understanding where they can affect it. I've been talking a lot with colleagues about this, how there's an issue of folks feel they don't have the time or energy to include DEI efforts, but it's understanding that DEI efforts can be part of a daily life. Like, I don't go out of my way to create all these DEI events and do all these things. It's just inclusive into what the culture I have is. And building a culture will spread that for you. I think the biggest holdup right now is folks feeling like it has to be this distinct, separate entity, whereas programs should just have it innate in their culture and it happens without need to intervene. I don't have to give a talk about language in my program because they know what's expected and new players see what others act like and one correction and they get it. The culture will build it for you.
So, and I agree. I think that it seems to be, I think, the nature of esports that time is always, I mean, it's time resources, it's money resources, it's everything. And I think a lot of times we hear, I just don't have time because, for me in our program, I'm the driver, I'm the custodian, I'm the director.
Yeah.
We're everything to all people. And a lot of times, they're part-time positions. They're not even full-time, or you're also doing five other things. And when you're at one of your 15 land trips a year, or you're providing resources for the broadcast that you're doing 200 times or whatever, how do you include it? But I mean, you're finding time because it's not that you're finding time to do it. It's just you don't have to do it because it's natural. It's become
Yeah.
ingrained. But I
And
think
it's
it's that
set up in
initial
my
step.
handbook too. It's
Yeah.
it's like in my handbook, in my statement, I do a welcome statement to families. Everything I do is building community and culture. And I think a thing leaders need to realize is that if you're a leader in a space, you are being watched at all times, whether you realize it or not. And
Yeah.
mentors, leaders, captains are all being watched and studied, and they have to understand that.
So, you mentioned one interesting thing, and I tend to have the same sort of policy, like the open door policy, and being engaged with the players as people first, and
Yeah.
not just being like, oh, you're my my top lane, or you're my my
Yeah.
SSL, whatever. I mean, do you see that as helping with that culture? Do you see any problems with that sort of kind of the relationship having with students, and or as programs grow, how that becomes difficult?
Open door gets really hard the bigger you get. And until I train my program to learn that once I'm away from my desk, please stop messaging me.
Oh,
My first year or two, I would sit down, eat dinner, and stand up to 45 messages.
yeah.
And it's not because they have like issues there sort out. They just want to ask questions, ideas. Hey, can we do this? Can we do this? Here's how the match went. I want to update you on these things. Everyone wants to centralize things to me. And what I've worked with that on is looking at structure. A program shouldn't just be running through one person, which a lot of times is a institutional program, but also delegate. I delegate team captains. I say all team related matters must go through coaches, and then it goes to me if I need to. I have a game manager who handles all of the scheduling and results. That all goes through him. I have a stream manager. I have a social media manager. Delegate, provide student work opportunities, and make sure folks have a space to make an impact of their own. And they'll actually solve a lot of your headaches around logistics because folks just do things. And now, like, what I was afraid of my first year at Wesleyan was if I took a day off, the program would collapse.
Yeah.
Now, I have systems in place, I have students in place, I have captains, coaches, managers, everything. I took a week off before Christmas break to go to Denmark, and the sky didn't fall. And in fact, we won our matches and we're on time to everything. All the broadcast ran smoothly and all the socials got updated smoothly, and like everything ran. So if there's systems in place to do these things, it just happens.
Yeah. Well, but building those systems is not easy, and it takes time, and it takes some intentional efforts to do those. Another thing I was thinking about is, this slide that you're on about evaluating the culture, and there's all these things that students look for in a program, but I don't think students think about half of these questions when they're looking at an esports program. They come in and they're like, hey, I want a full ride scholarship. I'm a bronze Rocket League player, and all of them have that same mantra, no matter what the level they are and what situation they're in. I've in my time at my university working with students, I've had to like advise them out of like majors as an example. Like you want to be a nursing major, but you don't like biology, or you want to be a computer scientist and you hate math. We have to kind of readjust. Do you ever have to work students, potential recruits out of that mindset of it's esports is just one thing?
Yeah, and sometimes there's students who really like our program and are trying to alter their plans for majors pretty radically to fit that. Because, for example, we're a private liberal arts college. We don't do engineering, and I'm very upfront about that. It is not a fault of ours. It's just what our institution does. We're a liberal arts college. I've had students who like, I love your program, I love your culture, I want to do this, but I want to do mechanical engineering. Try to do just like physics here. I'm like, we are not the fit for you.
Yeah.
Understand what school works for you academically, socially, and everything else. Or like students who are from thousands of miles away who would have to uproot their entire life to come here. They better damn well want to be here because otherwise they will hate it.
Mhm.
And it's just I've had to counsel students out of that. I've actually had to help my students with major changes too, because they've said like, "Hey, I just struggle with this major and I don't like it. I'm having a hard time enjoying it. What do I do?" I'm like, "Well, you should change. It's okay to change majors. On average, students change majors twice in college.
Mhm.
It's okay and it's expected. And there's systems in place at university to help you do that. So take advantage of it. And it's a lot of just telling students that it's okay to be wrong the first time. Let's change it.
Yeah, and I like that approach. I know it can be counterintuitive sometimes when administrators are looking at numbers and things like that to say, well, this student was a right fit for you, and it's like, well, if you get them here for one semester and they drop out, that can really upset the program because now you're looking at finding substitutes or changing the program around or
Exactly.
team dynamics and stuff. And so, sometimes making those good decisions can be long term more effective for the program than, just taking anybody, even if they're not a good fit. Um,
Yeah. And I've had a couple moments where it's like players. So I used to teach high school. I had some of my old high school players contact me saying, I want to do Wesley. And I'm like, you want to do ROTC? We don't do that. You want to do engineering? We don't do that. Stop trying to mold yourself into what the school wants. Find a school that's molded
yeah.
to you.
Absolutely. It's a square peg, round hole. Like they just keep trying to
And,
shove it.
and shaving the corners off will not make you happy.
Exactly. I like that. That might put that on a bumper sticker. We use that as a fundraiser. Right now I don't see any other questions coming in right now, but I really appreciate you being here. I think this is a great discussion to have, I think, within the collegiate scene. But I think it's great, especially for the target of this particular conference, the high school students directly, their parents, counselors, and high schools, coaches, and such. To let them know that it's okay to try to find a school that fits you. It's okay to ask tough questions. In my early session, I said, ask me the tough question. You should be interviewing me just as hard as I'm trying to recruit you.
And something that, so coming from once being a teacher, I had coaches reach out to me about recruiting certain players of mine who I knew the student wouldn't like the school.
Yeah.
It's the wrong fit for them. It's the wrong size, wrong everything. Because it's like, and teachers can be gatekeepers of students, but also can be their biggest advocates.
Mhm.
A lot of teachers stand up for their students and treat them like their own kids and will say this isn't right for them. So talk with your director as well. You have a high school sports coach, talk to them. Talk to the state league and get reference points. Unfortunately, one of the best and worst parts of esports is everyone knows everyone. But it means you can get reference points, so you can get suggestions, you can
Mhm.
say, hey, talk to this person, connections, these kind of things. The connections matter, the people matter more than the actual game itself.
Well, Cora, thank you so much for being here. I see your contact information on the screen. You've just extended your open door policy to the world now. So anybody that sees this will be emailing you.
That's public on my Twitter too. That's no problem for me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. The next session we have coming up, if you go to levelmeupnow.com, we have our final session of the day, which is going to be Mike Anderson. He's the president and co-founder of Fit Gamer. So he's going to be talking more about, getting ahead of being, your mental health, your physical health, eating habits, things of that nature, and even using software to try to capitalize upon that and manage that and produce really high performing teams. So thank you again, Core, for being here, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye bye.